It's a return visit to Dubai for my next guest here on Emirates. Graeme Simsion is by any definition a multi-talented man, wearing his IT hat, skilled in data modelling. He's also an expert on wine. He's involved in the antiques trade. He's written film scripts, short stories. He's run a marathon and once even appeared on stage dressed as a duck. However, he's best known for his award-winning trilogy, The Rosie Project, The Rosie Effect, and his latest book, published in February 2019, The Rosie Result. So Graeme Simsion, welcome back to Dubai. Well, welcome to Dubai, welcome to Emirates. It's lovely to see you again. I think we last spoke 5 years ago and we were talking about the second of the Rosie trilogy. Now here we are back again and it's number 3, the final book.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a gap between the Rosie Effect and the Rosie Result. The first two, the Rosie Project, the Rosie Effect, were right in each other's heels, but after that it was, it's been a gap, yeah.
Was it quite difficult to get the third one put to bed?
No, not really. I'd written 2 books in the interim, and those books required me to come up with completely new characters from scratch and so forth. It's nice to return to a world where you already know most of the characters, and in this third one, The Rosie Result, we introduced Don Tillman's son Hudson, and that was certainly the most difficult addition, but you were doing that against the background of everything else being in place.
Now you mentioned Don Tillman. He was the main character throughout the trilogy. For those people unfamiliar with the Rosie Project, tell us a little bit about Don. Who is he? What's the character about? And what are his defining characteristics?
Well, his defining characteristic is probably that he's autistic. He's a professor of genetics, and when I wrote the Rosie Project, we would have said he has Asperger's syndrome. That's changed now. But when I wrote it, I didn't have that in mind. I had in mind the sort of people that I had met and worked with when I worked in information technology, when I studied physics, when I was in the radio club and I did a PhD at science faculty at a university. So I wasn't writing about autism, I was writing about the sort of geeks that I'd worked with. But I thought, I hope in a very sympathetic way, albeit the Rosie Project is a romantic comedy. So the Rosie Project was about Don Tillman's scientific search for the perfect partner, and in the manner of romantic comedies, he finds someone who's entirely unsuitable. They go on a bit of a quest which is unrelated to that, and you can imagine how it all ends up. And I had no intention at that point of writing any sequels, which is why I went off and wrote 2 other books. And I in fact drafted both of those books before I came back and wrote The Rosie Effect.
But is this the final one now, or will there be a 4th book?
Look, there is a 4th book, but it's not a novel. I ended up publishing Don Tillman's Standardised Meal System by popular request. I'm not sure if popular request will translate into popular sales, but it just came out this year. Available by mail order from Australia. But it's Don's weekly meal planner, which is complete with shopping list. Every Tuesday he eats lobster. In summer, obviously. In spring it's something different, and so on. So a lot of people who are fans of Don Tillman and the Rosie series would just love to see that actually written up. So I wrote it up as recipes, as shopping lists, and quite a lot of Don Tillman's philosophy and opinions on everything.
Is Don Tillman, I'm sure you've been asked this question many times before, but was Don Tillman based on anybody you knew, or is it just a general characterisation?
Look, I met, well, it's not me is the first thing, although every one of my characters has got a dose of me in them. There was one particular friend who inspired, whose story inspired the original version of the Rosie Project. That story, after many rewrites and so on, completely disappeared. So it's gone from there, but there's a bit of the character that I would still relate back to him. But there's also a lot of other people that I knew that have been sort of thrown into the pot and stirred up.
And why did you pick on autism as a means of telling Don's story? Was it something that interested you in the first place, or was it just a storytelling technique? Well,
at the beginning, as I said, I didn't identify Don as even being autistic. That word wasn't in my head, not even Asperger's, which, as I say, was it's now been absorbed into the definition of autism, but back then we would have said Don has Asperger's syndrome. But I worked in a world where people didn't talk about autism or Asperger's. We just knew that there were people who fitted a little bit of a certain type or category, who were often valued colleagues and so forth, but a little quirky. And those people would appear from time to time in movies, in books and so on, but almost always in a secondary sort of role for comic relief only. You weren't supposed to feel for them in any way. And when I started studying screenwriting, I thought I'd like to take a character like that and write them in a fully fleshed, sympathetic way, make them the hero rather than just there for comic relief. So Don became the hero. The book's in first person. So I'm really saying to you, come on, get on board with this guy. Don't be on Rosie's side, or be with him, be in his head, understand him, be rooting for him.
Now, most authors write the novel first and then either go on to write the screenplay or hand it on to somebody else to write the screenplay for the movie. But I believe in this instance you started off with the screenplay.
Yeah, I didn't think I was up to writing a novel, but I thought I might be able to do a screenplay. And in fact, I'd made a bit of a home movie at one stage, and a couple of people said the screenplay wasn't too bad, and that gave me a little bit of encouragement. And I thought writing a screenplay would be easier than a novel, and I would still say that's true. The trouble is getting a screenplay made is just slightly more difficult than getting a novel published, you know, by several orders of magnitude. So I ended up with a screenplay which had won a prize and was quite well regarded, but no one's going to make it. And it was then that I woke up and thought, really, everybody's just adapting best-selling novels. That's a safe path for studios. So let's rewrite the screenplay as hopefully a best-selling novel. And that is, in fact, the way it turned out to be.
And I believe it is finally going to appear on a movie screen near you soon with Ryan Reynolds. Is that right?
No.
Oh, got that one wrong. Look, correct me.
No, belief is a wonderful thing. I keep trying to have faith too that it will one day be on the screen. But look, honestly, the story of a movie until it's actually made is so often, I'm not unique here, it's a roller coaster. Yeah. People are assigned to it, people drop out. We've had Ryan Reynolds certainly involved, but he dropped out. We had Jennifer Lawrence involved, she dropped out. We've had Richard Linklater, and we've had a raft of big names who've read the script, who've been sometimes involved, sometimes not. And you know, the stars just haven't aligned yet. And I treat movie rights, because all my books have been optioned for movies. I treat those options as like lottery tickets in the back pocket. Fabulous to have. You never know when they might come up, but you don't lie awake thinking about them. Now,
I'm just going to dive down here, because after the Rosie trilogy, next up we've got Two Steps Forward, which I believe, well, I know because it says up on the cover here, has been written between yourself and your wife.
That's right. In fact, Two Steps Forward came just before the Rosie Result. So that was one of the two books. The other was The Best of Adam Sharp, that I wrote in between the Rosie Effect and the Rosie Result. So I took a break from Rosie for a while, let Don and Rosie's son grow up and so on. But yeah, my wife and I wrote this together. It started off as a romantic comedy, because I was steeped in romantic comedy after doing the Rosie Project. It started off as a romantic comedy set on the Camino de Santiago, the famous pilgrim's walk in France and Spain. And my wife and I always plan our novels together. So she's a writer in her own right. Anne Buist, she writes crime. So we plan our novels together. We're each other's first readers. So we planned this one together. And then it was like, who's going to write it? So the final decision was we'd write it together. And that was, look, we had a lot of fun doing it. Because we'd walked that Camino ourselves, we walked a long version of it, about 1,200 miles, 2,000 kilometres. It was like going through the old photo albums and just remembering the things that happened, the places we went. But it is a novel rather than a memoir. Quite a lot of memoirs set there. But look, I think my best book that I've written is The Rosie Result. But this is the one I had the most fun writing.
Really? Because I don't know whether you can see this, but there's a map here, and it shows you starting off in Cluny. Is that
in
right?
Cluny in central France.
Yeah. Walking
down to Saint John through Le Puy-en-Velay to Saint Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is the traditional start of the Camino that people talk about. When they talk about we walked the Camino, it's usually the Camino Francaise starting at that point. When we got there, we walked 1,100 and we then had 850 kilometres to walk. We actually took an alternative route along the coast through to Santiago de Compostela, which is the end of all of the Caminos.
And this is a proper walking trail where it's all marked out?
It's all marked out. So when you say it's a proper walking trail, it's a route. It's a marked route which takes advantage of obviously trails and roads and so on already in place. And so you do everything from walking on the highway to being in, not quite hands and, you know, but just certainly doing some more rugged terrain. And it took us just on 3 months to do it. So it was a great adventure.
Wow.
And we did it twice. We went back and did it again. Once we had the novel drafted, because we hadn't walked with the novel in mind, we realised there were lots of gaps, things we didn't know, so we went back and we slightly different route, we did it again.
No wonder you're looking so slim and healthy.
Well, that's very kind of you.
So, what's it like writing together? You say you write separately. Anne writes her novels, you write yours. How do you work together as a writing team, a writing duo?
So many people have said that a lot less tactfully than you did. They said, how on earth do you manage to work with your wife? How did you survive? And I said, well, you know, call me crazy, but when we got together, we thought we would spend our lives doing things that we both enjoyed together. And that's what we both enjoy. We both enjoy writing. It works pretty well, I think partly because Anne's a psychiatrist by profession. I came from information technology. They're professions where you have to accept peer review and criticism. So you get used to it. You can't be a prima donna in those fields. So we are both pretty comfortable at giving and taking, and we both know that we want the best possible outcome. And you know, frankly, if it's a bestseller, we're both going to spend the money.
So do you ever argue, or does it always run smoothly?
Okay, there was this one chapter that got left out of there.
I thought there might be.
There was this one chapter that got left out that was a really wonderful chapter. And look, with my intellectual, screenwriting, because screenwriters are very good at chopping down and making it very tight, hat on, I would say, yes, it probably had to go, but there's a little bit of affection for that chapter. If it had just been me, I might have left it in. My editor would have taken it out.
Well, look, Graeme, it's been great talking to you. It's lovely to see you back in Dubai. Having been here previously, is this an event that you look forward to, the invite popping through the letterbox?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a really well organised festival. One of the things that you like as an author is meeting other authors, and you get a chance to do that and to meet a different audience. So yeah, if it comes through the mail again, I'll certainly be putting my hand up. And
if it does, is there a new book in the pipeline?
Well, Anne and I are working on a book tentatively titled 2 Steps South. So we were not burned by the experience of doing one together, and we actually have a draft at this stage, and we're working on that with another walk with the same characters, but this time in France and Italy.
Brilliant. Hey, it's been wonderful talking to you.
Great talking to you, Steve.
It's been fun. Do come and see us again with the new book, and yeah, we can have another chat.
I'll take that as a formal invitation.
There you go.